I held my phone up, the screen glowing with their messages, cold, undeniable proof of their betrayal. Brian stood there, rain dripping from his hair, his eyes darting between me and the evidence like a trapped animal. "Taylor, please, I can explain." I cut him off with a sharp laugh, shaking my head. "Explain? What exactly is there to explain, Brian? That you, Mom, and Dad have been treating me like your personal ATM for years? That you were all laughing at me while I was covering your bills, thinking I was helping my family?" His face twisted in guilt, but I wasn't buying it. "Not anymore. It's not what it looks like," he insisted, voice cracking. I tilted my head, my grip tightening around my phone. "Oh, really? Because it looks like 3 years of messages about how stupid I am for trusting you, about how I'd flip if I knew my money was going toward Dad's new golf clubs instead of his medications." I took a step forward, lowering my voice, making him squirm. "So tell me, Brian, what am I taking out of context?" He swallowed hard, glancing away. "Mom and Dad, they started it. I just went along with it." My jaw clenched. "Ah, I see. Just following orders." Like some kind of financial lapdog, the words came out sharper than I intended, but I didn't regret them. Because that's exactly what he was. He flinched, but he didn't deny it. And that told me everything I needed to know. The rain pounded harder, matching the storm brewing inside me, but for the first time in a long time, I felt clear-headed. "You know what?" I exhaled, stepping back just enough to grip the door. "Save it. Whatever excuse you had planned, I don't care. I'm done." Brian's face paled. "Taylor, please, we can fix this." "Fix this?" I echoed, raising an eyebrow. "Oh, I already did. Froze the transfers, canceled the automatic payments, changed my account info, and just in case you, Mom, or Dad get any ideas, I changed the locks too." His eyes widened in pure horror. "Wait, Taylor, you don't have to do that." I let out a slow, amused breath. "No, Brian, I want to do that. Because for years you all made your choices. Now, you get to live with them." And with that, I shut the door in his face. The sound of rain and his desperate knocking faded as I locked it behind me. I stood there for a moment, letting it sink in. The weight, the guilt, the obligation. I had finally let it all go. They'd used me, manipulated me, drained me dry. And now, they could see what life was like without their stupid, successful daughter footing the bill. My phone buzzed. A new message from Mom. "We're family, Taylor. You'll regret this." I smirked, flipping my phone face down. "No, Mom, I won't." I took a deep breath, gripping my phone like it was the only thing keeping me grounded. $180,000, Brian. The number hung between us, sharp and heavy. His eyes darted away. "I know it's a lot." "A lot?" I scoffed. "That's just the monthly transfers. Let's not forget the emergencies." My stomach twisted as I thought about the extra thousands I had wired over the years, Dad's fake medical expenses, Mom's imaginary furnace repair. I skipped vacations, put off buying my own home, worked myself to exhaustion, while you all were laughing at me behind my back. Brian swallowed hard. "They took it too far. I get that. But they're freaking out, Taylor. They need you." I let out a sharp, humorless laugh. "Oh, you mean they need their gravy train to keep running?" I gestured toward my phone, where the screenshots of their secret group chat were still burning into my screen. "Dad's worried about his heart medication?" "You mean the one that doesn't exist? Or is he actually out of the medicine I was paying for while you all were buying luxury crap?" Brian flinched. He had no defense, no excuse that could make this better. "Look, I messed up," he admitted, voice barely above a whisper. "But they really can't afford their mortgage without you." I froze. "Their mortgage?" My voice dropped. dangerously low. You mean the one on the lakeside condo they bought last year while crying to me about struggling to pay rent? His silence told me everything. A strange calm settled over me, like the storm of emotions had finally passed. I exhaled, stepping back. I think you should leave. His shoulders slumped. Taylor, please. Number. I shook my head. I've been Taylor, please, for too long. Now, I'm just Taylor, and Taylor is done. I shut the door before he could say another word, locking it without hesitation. The weight of years of manipulation, guilt, and obligation evaporated with that single action. I sank onto my couch, my entire body trembling, my mind replaying every cruel message they had sent. Just told Taylor the roof is leaking. Let's see how much we can squeeze out of her this time. She's such a sucker for helping family. I almost feel bad. Almost. Maybe we should start a betting pool on how quickly she sends the money. My chest tightened, but not with sadness. Pure, simmering rage. I grabbed my laptop and pulled up my bank records. Month after month, $3,000 transferred to my parents' account. Every so-called emergency stacking up, totaling well over $40,000 in extras. Dental work that never happened. Car repairs for problems that didn't exist. Medical bills that were just straight-up lies. And me? I had put my own life on hold for them, worked 60-hour weeks, settled for second-hand furniture, sacrificed my own homeownership plans so they could sip cocktails on a cruise I didn't even know they had taken. My blood boiled. Then I clicked over to another tab, the investment account I had secretly set up for them 3 years ago. $42,000. I had planned to surprise them with it when they turned 70, a safety net they didn't even know existed. My finger hovered over the close account button. Not yet. I needed a clear head for this. I grabbed my phone and called my best friend Danielle, who also happened to be my attorney. They did what? She practically screamed. I sighed. Yeah, I've been an idiot. No, Taylor, you've been kind. Her voice softened. They're the ones who should be ashamed. So what do you want to do? I exhaled, my mind racing. Part of me wants to just cut them off completely. Another part wants to watch them squirm and explain themselves. Danielle was silent for a beat. Before you do anything, we need to review what you've set up for them legally. I smirked, finally feeling like I had the upper hand. Let's do it. I stared at my phone, Danielle's words echoing in my mind. Are they on any of your accounts, insurance policies, the retirement supplement you mentioned? A cold realization settled over me. I hadn't even thought about how deeply they were embedded in my finances. Not just the money I'd been sending. No, this was worse. I had them listed as dependents on my premium health insurance. My dad's so-called heart medication covered under my plan. They were also beneficiaries on my life insurance. Every string tying us together was another avenue for them to keep taking from me. Not anymore. I need to untangle all of this, I muttered. Danielle was calm, methodical. One step at a time. First, document everything. Bank transfers, texts, every dime they took. Second, make a list of everything that needs to be cut off. Third, decide how or if you want to tell them. As I hung up, my phone buzzed. Your father is very upset. His blood pressure is through the roof because of your behavior. We need to talk now. I almost laughed. Even now they were still trying to guilt me. They still thought throwing a fake medical crisis at me would make me cave. But I wasn't that person anymore. My hands moved with certainty as I opened my laptop and started taking screenshots. Every monthly transfer, every fake emergency, every excuse. Then I created a document titled Family Financial Support. 5 years. Every lie, every sacrifice. By the time I finished, it was 12 pages long, and staring at it, the truth hit me. I wasn't just hurt. I was done. The next morning, I woke up with a clarity I hadn't felt in years. No hesitation, no second guessing. Before doubt could creep in, I called my assistant and took the day off. This needed my full attention. "Taylor Reed speaking," I answered, when my phone rang 20 minutes later. "Miss Reed, this is Nicholas from Greenfield National Bank. I'm returning your call about closing an investment account. Yes, thank you for getting back to me so quickly." I took a breath. I need to close the supplemental retirement account I set up for Thomas and Barbara Reed. There was a pause. "May I ask if there's a problem with the account?" I smiled, but there was no humor in it. No problem with the account, just the intended recipients. After verifying my authority, Nicholas walked me through the process. Since I was the sole account holder, it had legally been a gift, which meant I could revoke it without their knowledge. Within 3 business days, $42,680 would be back in my account. "Is there anything else I can help you with today, Miss Reed?" "Actually, yes," I said, my voice unwavering. "Cancel all recurring transfers to the joint account belonging to Thomas and Barbara Reed." Another pause. "That's the $3,000 monthly transfer, correct?" "Correct. Stop it immediately." Step 1. Done. Next, I called my health insurance provider. This one was trickier. Mid-year changes required a qualifying life event, and being scammed by your own family wasn't exactly on their checklist. But after explaining my situation to a surprisingly sympathetic rep named Antonio, he found a workaround. Since they have their own residence and you no longer provide more than 50% of their financial support, we can process this as a dependent status change, he explained. They'll be notified that their coverage ends in 30 days, giving them time to find an alternative. "That's perfect," I said, relieved. "Thank you for understanding." Antonio sighed. "Family situations can be complicated. Been there myself." Step 2. Complete. I exhaled, a weight lifting off my chest. The financial ties were severed, and as for the emotional ones, that was next. Changing my life insurance policy took less than 5 minutes. A few clicks, a quick confirmation, and just like that, my parents were erased from it, replaced by a local children's charity. By noon, I had severed nearly every financial tie they had to me. Every monthly transfer, every emergency payment, every manipulated dollar, gone. The only thing left? My brother Brian's student loan. I'd been covering his $580 monthly payments for 3 years, with 2 more years to go. That one gave me pause. Had Brian been forced into their lies, or was he just sorry he got caught? Before I could decide, my phone buzzed. "Mom and Dad are freaking out. Dad says his prescription refill was denied. What did you do?" "Ah." That answered my question. No apology, no remorse, just a demand to fix it. I typed back, "Their consequences are not my problem anymore." My phone rang instantly. "Brian." Decline. Instead, I opened my laptop and drafted an email with the subject line, "Financial support provided, 2018 to 2023. Thomas and Barbara. Attached is a comprehensive record of the financial support I have provided over the past 5 years, totaling $221,865. This includes monthly transfers, emergency funds, medical expenses, and the supplemental retirement account I set up for you. As of today, all recurring transfers have been stopped. You have been removed as dependents from my health insurance policy, effective May 31st, and the retirement account has been closed. Your deception has been documented, including screenshots of your own words mocking my generosity while scheming to extract more money from me. Do not contact me again unless it is to repay what you have taken under false pretenses. Taylor Reed. I read it over twice, attached the 12-page financial breakdown, and hit send. Step 3. Complete. Then, I blocked their numbers, removed them from my social media, and sat back. For the first time in years, my money was mine. I enjoyed exactly 3 days of peace before they found a way around my blocks. At 8:30 p.m., while I was finishing up a client proposal, the doorbell rang. Through the peephole, I saw them, my parents and Brian, standing on my porch, their faces a mess of rage and desperation. I didn't open the door. Instead, I called Danielle. "They're at my house," I whispered, as if they might hear me through the walls. "Do not let them in," she said immediately. "If they don't leave, call the police for trespassing. That feels extreme. Trust me, Taylor. If they get inside, it'll be harder to get them out, physically and emotionally." The doorbell rang again, then pounding. "Taylor," my father's voice boomed. "We know you're in there. You can't just cut us off without talking to us." I grabbed my phone and sent a single text to Brian. "I have nothing to say. Please leave, or I'll call the police." Through the peephole, I watched Brian check his phone, show it to my parents, and then chaos, a heated argument. My mother burst into tears. My dad's face turned a dangerous shade of red. But after a few more minutes, they left. Not before my father turned back, shouting one final warning. "You're going to regret this, Taylor. We're family. You can't just abandon us." The irony was almost laughable. They had abandoned me a long time ago, seeing me as nothing more than a bank account with a heartbeat. By morning, the emails started. First from my mother, a guilt-drenched monologue about how my father's health was declining, now that he couldn't afford his medication. I didn't even bother responding. Their lies weren't my responsibility anymore. My dad sent a blunt text demanding I stop this childish behavior immediately. Brian, meanwhile, was practically begging. "Mom and Dad can't afford the mortgage without you." I didn't bother replying. Instead, I forwarded every message to Danielle. 3 days later, a certified letter arrived. Inside was a handwritten note from my mother, dripping with performative concern. "Taylor, we don't understand why you're punishing us like this. Yes, we made some jokes in poor taste, but that's what families do. Your father's heart medication is $450 per month without insurance. Our mortgage is due next week, and we can't cover it without your help. We might lose our condo. Is that what you want? For your elderly parents to be homeless? Please stop this cruelty and talk to us." I nearly laughed at elderly. They were 65, in great health, and Dad's golf game had never been better. Something I knew for a fact thanks to the country club photos Brian had accidentally included in those infamous screenshots. But I wanted more proof, so I called my dad's pharmacy, pretending to be my mom. "Hi, I'm calling about my husband, Thomas Reed. What's the cost of his heart medication without insurance?" The pharmacist checked. "That would be $42 for a 30-day supply, Mrs. Reed, not $450. Another lie. That evening, as I was leaving my office, Brian was waiting for me. He looked awful, dark circles under his eyes, rumpled clothes, the whole guilty conscience aesthetic. "Taylor, please," he said, stepping in front of me. "They're falling apart. Dad's talking about bankruptcy." "Not my problem," I replied, trying to step around him. "How can you be so cold? They're our parents." "Are they?" "Because real parents don't exploit their kids. Real parents don't laugh behind their child's back about how stupid and gullible they are. They made mistakes, but no." I cut him off. Forgetting a birthday is a mistake. What they did was calculated. It was cruel. For years, Brian, his shoulders slumped. The condo is going into foreclosure. They can't make the payments without you." For half a second, I felt a twinge of guilt until I remembered the text my dad had sent months ago. "Just convince Taylor we're struggling with rent. Meanwhile, we're closing on the lake condo next week. Cheers." "Then they shouldn't have bought a place they couldn't afford," I said flatly. "What about Dad's medication?" Brian pressed. "The prescription that costs $42, not $450? I tilted my head. "He can get a job at Walmart if he needs to cover that." Brian's eyes widened. "How did you—" I smirked. "I did my research." "No more lies, Brian." I stepped past him, unlocking my car. "Tell them to look into government assistance. That's what it's there for." "Taylor," he called after me, desperation creeping into his voice. "They're talking about moving in with me. I can't handle that." I turned back, my voice cool. "That sounds like a you problem, Brian. Welcome to consequences." 2 weeks later, I sat in a therapist's office, an appointment I finally made for myself. Dr. Harper, a sharp but kind woman in her 50s, listened as I laid it all out. "Every day I swing between feeling strong and feeling horrible," I admitted. "Like yesterday, I found out from a mutual friend that my parents had to cancel their country club membership. I actually felt guilty about it for hours." Dr. Harper nodded. "That's normal. You're grieving the family you thought you had, and that includes grieving the role you played as their provider." "But they didn't deserve my support," I muttered. "They were using me." "Both things can be true at once," she said gently. "They didn't deserve your support, and you can still feel a sense of loss over no longer providing it. The role of family provider became part of your identity. Now you're figuring out who you are without it, and for the first time in years, that actually felt like freedom." I hadn't thought about it that way before, but Dr. Harper was right. For 5 years, I'd wrapped my entire self-worth around being the successful daughter who could support her parents. But now, that identity was gone. Who was I without it? That question lingered as I left my session, until my phone buzzed with a call from an unexpected name. Uncle Steve, my father's older brother. We weren't close, so I almost let it go to voicemail, but curiosity won. "Taylor? It's your Uncle Steve. Your dad just called, asking if he and your mom could come live with us for a while. Said you cut them off and they're about to lose their home. Is that true?" I exhaled slowly. "It's complicated, Uncle Steve." He chuckled dryly. "Figured. Your dad's always had a talent for selective storytelling. Want to tell me your side?" So I did. Every detail, from the fake medical bills to the lake house scam to the texts mocking me behind my back. When I finished, the line went silent for a long moment. Then he sighed. "I'm not surprised. Your father tried to pull the same stunt with me years ago. It's why we're not close. I refuse to fund his lifestyle. That hit different. You knew?" A fresh wave of betrayal washed over me. "Why didn't you warn me?" "Would you have believed me?" he asked simply. "They had you convinced they were struggling, and you were their hero. Sometimes people have to discover the truth for themselves." And damn it, he was right. I wouldn't have believed him. I had needed to see the receipts for myself. "For what it's worth," he continued, "I told your father I wouldn't take them in. Suggested they downsize and live within their means." He hung up on me. After we disconnected, I felt something I hadn't in weeks. Validation. I wasn't crazy. I wasn't cruel. I wasn't a horrible daughter. I was just the latest target in a long line of people my parents had tried to manipulate. But now, the game was over. That evening, a text from an unknown number popped up. "Brian. Mom and Dad are moving into my spare room next week. They're selling the condo. Dad's furious about it. I can't believe this is happening." I didn't respond. 3 days later, another one. "Brian, the condo is on the market. Dad's car got repossessed yesterday." This is getting really bad. For half a second, my thumb hovered over the keyboard. Maybe I should at least offer help with moving expenses. No. Then I remembered a certain screenshot. Taylor just asked if Dad was doing okay after his doctor's appointment for the heart issue that doesn't exist. Ha 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 ha. They had laughed at my concern, laughed at my willingness to help. They'd made their choices. Now they were living with the consequences. Week 3 brought an email from an unfamiliar sender. The subject line, "Message from your parents." Apparently, they'd found a family friend willing to play mediator. The email was a sob story, detailing how they'd been forced to sell their furniture, how my father's health was deteriorating from the stress, how they'd had to apply for food stamps, something he found humiliating. It ended with a final plea. They just want a chance to talk to you, to explain and apologize. I considered it for all of 5 seconds before hitting delete. Their version of an apology wouldn't be real. It would be whatever they thought might get the money flowing again. I wasn't falling for it. My money was finally going toward my future, not their fabricated emergencies. And that nagging guilt? It was fading, replaced by something I never thought I'd feel. Freedom. 6 months later, I pulled into my driveway after a business trip, exhausted and ready to crash, only to find them, my parents, sitting on my porch steps. My father looked thinner, his usual arrogance replaced with something more hollow. My mother's perfectly maintained highlights had grown out, streaked with gray. They were wearing clothes I didn't recognize, cheaper than what they used to wear. My first instinct? Turn around and drive away. But Dr. Harper had warned me this moment would come. And now? Now I was strong enough to face them. I stepped out of my car, taking a deep breath as I approached the 2 people I once called family. My parents sat on my porch, looking smaller than I remembered. My mother's face was tight with something between desperation and pride, while my father shifted uncomfortably. "What are you doing here?" I asked, keeping my tone flat. "Taylor," my mother's voice cracked. "Please, we just want to talk." My father nodded. "We've learned our lesson. These past few months have been hell. I didn't invite them in, didn't rush to make them feel comfortable like I once would have. Instead, I simply unlocked my door and stepped inside." "You have 5 minutes." They perched awkwardly on the couch while I remained standing, arms crossed. My mother was the first to speak. "We're sorry. We never should have taken advantage of your generosity." My father jumped in, nodding along. "We've lost everything. Our condo, the car, our savings. We had to move in with Brian, and his place is so small. Your mother sleeps on a pull-out couch. The country club revoked our membership," my mother added, her voice carrying an edge of disbelief. "All our friends are there. They don't even call anymore. And my medication costs have been terrible without your insurance," my father sighed. "Medicare doesn't cover everything." I let them speak. Let them list every hardship, every inconvenience, every consequence they'd faced. But that's all it was, a list, no actual apology, no "we hurt you" or "we were wrong," just an endless recounting of their suffering, with the unspoken expectation that I'd feel guilty enough to fix it. When they finally fell silent, I met their eyes. "That's it?" My mother's lip trembled. "We want to make things right, Taylor. We've really suffered. We've learned our lesson." I tilted my head. And what lesson would that be? They exchanged nervous glances before my father finally spoke. "That we shouldn't have taken you for granted." Ah, there it was. Translation. They weren't sorry for what they did. They were sorry they got caught. I exhaled slowly, keeping my voice calm. Number, you haven't learned anything. My mother's expression hardened. What do you mean? We came all this way to apologize. No, I corrected. You came all this way to tell me how much you've suffered without my money. Not once have you acknowledged how your betrayal made me feel. My father frowned. We said we're sorry. For getting caught, maybe. Not for what you did. I let the weight of my words settle before continuing. In the past 6 months, I've thought a lot about what a healthy family looks like. And it's not this. It's not treating your child like an ATM and mocking her behind her back. My mother's mask finally cracked, and her true colors bled through. So you're just going to keep punishing us? Over a few jokes? I shook my head. This isn't punishment. This is me protecting myself from people who've shown they don't actually care about me. We're your parents, my father said. Like that alone absolved him. I nodded. And I was your daughter, not your personal bank. I stepped toward the door, pulling it open. I wish you well. I hope you figure out how to live within your means. But I can't be part of your lives anymore. My mother's voice was barely above a whisper. You can't mean that. We need you. That's the problem, I said, my voice steady. You don't need me. You need what I can provide. There's a difference. My father stood abruptly, his tone shifting from pleading to anger. So that's it? After everything we've done for you? I tilted my head. And what exactly have you done for me, Dad, besides take and take and take? He had no answer. As they walked out, my mother turned back one last time. You'll regret this, Taylor. Family is all you have in the end. I gave her a sad smile. No, Mom. Family is supposed to love you unconditionally. I've built that family with people who actually care about me. What you offered was just a transaction. I shut the door, pressing my back against it. I waited for the guilt to creep in, the second guessing, the sadness. But it never came. Instead, I felt something I hadn't in years. Peace. The ATM was permanently closed, and for the first time in my adult life, I was truly, finally free.